everything I'm running on, it's all overwhelmingly popular, both in the district and across the country, right? This is a platform that the voters are behind. The politicians aren't necessarily behind it, because I do call for getting rid of big money in politics. I call for a tax on the richest people in our country. I call for ending all military funding to Israel. These are all things that voters overwhelmingly support, but the politicians don't do.
Joining us now, giant killer, Shoykat Chakrabarti. So he was the campaign manager and chief of staff for AOC in that legendary primary where AOC knocked out Joe Crowley. He is the candidate against Nancy Pelosi. And today, down goes Pelosi. Down goes Pelosi. Shoykat, good to have you back on the program. Are you right now the only person in the race, unopposed, now that your opponent Nancy Pelosi has surrendered?
I'm not the only one in the race. There is one other person in the race who hopped in a week ago. He's really the establishment pick, but I think you want to get ahead of it. But he's been running for a little bit, and so it's the two of us right now.
Okay, so I'm gonna come back to him in a second, because that means he probably knew what Pelosi was gonna do. Okay, because they're not done with you yet. So I'm calling Shoykat the West Coast Mamdani, and now that Pelosi stepped down, there's a little bit of truth to that. Look, Shoykat, keeping it real, of course it wasn't just you that drove Pelosi out, right? She's 84 years old, etc. But do you think that given the strong challenge you were doing and how you'd close a tremendous amount on the polling already, and given that Mamdani just knocked out Cuomo, that Pelosi might have been worried about losing that primary?
Yeah, there's actually some reporting on Politico that I just saw that Pelosi had prepared two different videos for today for her retirement. One was a retirement announcement and one was a re-election announcement. So I don't think she had made up her mind well in advance. But what I do know is this campaign has had so much momentum over the last several months. We just did a rally about a couple weeks ago in the Mission. We had 800 people show up. And Cenk, you remember when we were running races in 2018, when there was this appetite for change, we had nothing like that, right? Like the biggest rally I think AOC had was about 40 people. That's not a knock on her at all. She's an incredible candidate. I mean, she's amazing. It's just the demand for change was overwhelming, and it really is overwhelming right now. And then on top of that, we released some polling last month that showed that when voters hear about me and they hear about her, so nothing negative about her, they just hear about the two campaigns, our campaign ends up winning by 6 points. So I think all that really did feed into her decision at the end of the day. And I don't know when she finally made the decision. I know she had two videos lined up and she went with the one to decide to retire today.
No, the two Mamdanis beat her then, for sure. Because if she had two videos ready, as Politico's reporting, that means she hadn't made up her mind and was waiting for the election results. And remember, the Democrats won everything, so it's not like she would have been discouraged, like, oh no, the Democrats will never get control of Congress again. In fact, if she'd stayed and she had won, she might have been Speaker of the House again, especially given the results from yesterday. But because Mamdani won, I think she started to get nervous. Biden stayed too long, Cuomo stayed too long, even though he's not as old as them, but he was a governor and tried to come back as mayor. Obviously, you guys beat Crowley, with AOC, and now you're beginning to see the handwriting on the wall, right? And so it seems like that Mamdani win with you closing in as well, kind of had her in a pincer move that got her worried enough to drop out. So, but tell us about the polling. How much did you close that got her worried?
Well, I know when I started the campaign, we were down 25 and we closed that gap in half just over the several months I'd been campaigning. And then the poll showed that if we had kept going against her, we'd end up winning by 6, right? So it was just a matter of getting my name out there, getting the campaign out there, because everything I'm running on, it's all overwhelmingly popular, both in the district and across the country, right? This is a platform that the voters are behind. The politicians aren't necessarily behind it, because I do call for getting rid of big money in politics. I call for a tax on the richest people in our country. I call for ending all military funding to Israel. These are all things that voters overwhelmingly support, but the politicians don't do. And so I think, that of course she saw that polling and that made a difference, but I agree with you. The other thing that the Mamdani race really showed is that it is possible to defeat the establishment when you are standing for working people, when you're standing on a set of policies that are popular, and when you can communicate that. Because Mamdani, he got outspent like 100 to 1 or something crazy like that, right? And the establishment, all they know is how to raise money, and they believe that's the only way to defeat people in elections. So when someone like Mamdani wins with a people-powered movement, the establishment doesn't really know how to respond to that, because all of a sudden their main weapon, money, it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, I mean, they spent $40 million on him and couldn't really dent him. He got over 50% with 3 people in the race. That's amazing. So now let's move on to the how the race is going to go going forward. And the reason I ask that, and by the way, the reason you're on this revolution segment is because you're a populist, and this is a revolt against the establishment. And we've featured Marjorie Taylor Greene before. We're featuring you, left, right, outsiders, grassroots, fighting for real change and trying to get our government back for the people. So I think the bigger spotlight you put on this race, the better, because when you have a big spotlight, as Mamdani did, people go, oh wait, you're the one fighting for us. This is not a hard question, right? So I didn't see who got in last week. I'm gonna guess it was Weiner. Was it Weiner?
It was Weiner, yeah.
Yeah, so tell us who he is, and that'll inform people as to why I think that he might have been tipped off.
So Scott Weiner is a state senator who represents San Francisco, and he's really is the establishment candidate. He's been working in government, working his way up, waiting for Nancy Pelosi to retire for years now. And he's got a lot of big money on his side. I know he's already raising money for a super PAC that's gonna be going against me. He raised a bunch of money on his first day. I think his average donation was over $1,000. So he's got the corporations and the big donors on his side. The other thing to know about Scott Weiner is he was the chief architect of this bill that just passed in California that is a censorship bill. It's a bill that equates criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism in our public school system, and everyone is against it. The public school teachers are against it, ACLU is against it, but he's been trying to push this through the legislature for years, and he finally got it passed. And the result of it is, in San Francisco, our textbook just doesn't teach about Israel and Palestine anymore. It's such a chilling effect on free speech, right? But the other piece of this is you talked about how we need a revolt in the Democratic Party, right? Since the beginning of this campaign, I've been really clear that I'm not trying to just run against Nancy Pelosi. I think the entire Democratic Party needs to change. We've got to be a party that is fearless about standing for working people and about actually getting this stuff done. And so I've been calling for people to primary other Democrats all across the country. I went on Mehdi Hassan's show the other day, and I told the camera, we need someone to primary Hakeem Jeffries. We need someone to primary Chuck Schumer. We need a change in the leadership. We need people who know how to actually stand up right now and fight, and then people with a vision to actually build that economy. And that's the kind of thing that, of course, Scott Weiner is not gonna be for, right? And I'd say Scott Weiner, as a state senator, he's gonna be campaigning on his experience. I'd say his experience has been, he's focused on housing over the last 14 years. And in that time in San Francisco, rents have more than doubled. We have a huge housing crisis. So I don't think he's been successful there. But he's also had experience working in a largely Democratic Sacramento, passing some reforms here and there. I think we actually need to do the big structural changes. We need Medicare for all. We need universal childcare. We need tuition-free public colleges. We need to raise the minimum wage. These are things that we have to actually organize as a movement to get. We're not gonna be able to do it by just having a technocrat in DC writing some little reforms and doing that kind of work, getting big ideas into real legislation. That's what I have experience doing.
Yeah, I remember that smear video that said that you're the mastermind behind the progressive movement in the Democratic Party, which I thought that's like the best smear video of all time. But now you're saying, hey, go and primary these incumbents, and we find out today Michael Blake's primarying Richie Torres. So maybe you are the mastermind. Okay. So, anyways, so on Weiner, look, the minute you tell me that he's doing cancel culture on education on behalf of Israel, I'm done with him. No, serve this country, period. Okay, and that's. I mean, what a random thing to imagine if I'm a state representative and I'm like, okay, I want to get all your textbooks and make them pro-Turkish. You'd be like, that's super weird, right? All right, anyways, now I want to talk about one other person that might come into the race. They're talking about some sort of Nepo baby, some Pelosi relative that's gonna come in, a niece, an uncle, a daughter. I think it's a daughter. I'm being facetious, I know it's a daughter. But anyway, tell me about that. Do you think Christine Pelosi might get in?
I honestly have no clue. I've heard the same rumors you have that she's been wanting to get in for a long time. But honestly, I don't think she has much of a chance. I think people are really done with dynastic politics, and people are really, really done with the status quo. They're done with politics as usual. I think if you look at the polling of the Democratic Party, even amongst Democrats, people know the party needs to change. So I'd be really surprised if she jumps into the race at this point, just because I don't think she's got a shot.
Yeah. He's calling you out, Christine. You gonna sit there and take it? Okay. And look, they've got to, of course, they got to be worried that they are going to split the vote, right? Because they're both establishment and everybody knows it, and you're the only progressive in the race. So come on in, the water's hot, okay? And so now all of a sudden they're gonna be like, wait, do we run the Nepo baby or do we run the establishment dude who's been waiting in line? They love those two categories, right? So, and then eventually they'll want to drive one of them out, and we've seen this movie 100 times. But I remember the first time we talked about this race, Shortcut, and I told the story of how things are always called impossible. Like Shortcut and I were 2 out of the 4 co-founders of Justice Democrats, right? And when we founded it, it was said, oh, that's impossible. AOC's not gonna beat Joe Crowley. He's the number 4 Democrat in the House. None of these people are gonna win. Who are you guys? You're not even anyone established in Washington. You're randos. You're not gonna get anybody into Congress. And of course, Justice Democrats now have 11 people in Congress. So we did pull those things off. But what happens is, after you start winning, then all of a sudden they call it inevitable. Because they don't want to give you credit. And Shortcut, that kind of happened today. Because when you first came on, people were like, oh, Cenk, what are you, Shortcut, come on, don't be ridiculous. What are you gonna do, beat Nancy Pelosi? That's impossible, you can't win this race, it's impossible. Now Pelosi drops out, they're like, well, it was inevitable that she was gonna drop out, of course.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I've learned in all my time working in politics is you gotta try. And yes, 9 times out of 10, if you try, you'll be amazed at what's possible, because everyone's got their assumptions. So-and-so is not defeatable. So-and-so policy could never happen. We could never make this kind of change. And you know what that does is it feeds into this nihilism, which is the real enemy we have, right? It's this nihilism that says nothing's ever gonna change. Nothing's ever gonna be possible. But I think it's all possible. Not just me winning this race. I think actually getting a whole new movement of Democrats to really fight for people, that's possible. I think not being bought out by the corporations, that's possible. I think building an economy where people can just work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and afford to live, afford a home, afford to raise a family, that is possible. We can rebuild the American dream. And I don't know, it's gonna be the same thing where once that starts happening, when we get to the other side, it's gonna be hard. But once we get there, people are gonna say, oh, of course, this is where the country is going. And that'll be fine. I'll be so happy if we get there.
Yeah. All right, last question. So look, nobody's counting any chickens. They're nowhere near hatching. It's still a year out. They're gonna spend $1 gajillion against you. The entire establishment's gonna be against you. Mainstream media was actually kind of nice to you when they thought you weren't gonna win. My prediction is they'll change on a dime, and all of a sudden they'll start digging into your life and find out what T-shirts you wear. An literal attack that was done on Shortcut earlier when he was running Justice Democrats. Anyways, and so all of that is coming. But if you win this race and you help to knock out the number 1 and the number 4 Democrat in the House, how large is your swagger going to be in Congress? I mean, are you going to be walking around the whole time like, what now?
Cenk, you know me. I'm a humble guy. I'm not the kind of guy who walks around showing much. I don't talk that much. I act. That's what it boils down to. I'm not going to be satisfied until we actually get to a point where we're building that economy that works for everybody. I really am not, because that's what this is about. It's not about just this one race. It's not about just replacing a few Democrats. I won't be happy if all we do is get a little Tea Party movement that fails in Democratic Party. We have to replace the whole darn thing. And we've got to actually get to the point where we do the hard work of implementing this stuff, because that's the only way we're gonna defeat authoritarianism in the long run. If democracy can't work to improve people's lives, then people are gonna go for the strong man who's saying, I alone can fix it, and just give me power and I can do it. But yeah, I'll feel a little bit of swagger, I guess, if that happens.
Yeah, no, but you're right, overall. I'm mainly the swagger guy. Shortcut's definitely humble. But look, guys, he said something that's really important. I don't want you to miss it. Policy is the only thing that matters. If Shortcut gets in and we can't pass any policy, then we didn't win. The win isn't the race. The win is when you actually pass the bills. So eyes on the prize, love it. And I got an idea for a website for you, Shortcut. I'll text you afterwards. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with TYT overall, yeah, we have an opinion. Yeah, I know I'm interviewing him, but I like him. I think you should vote for him. In fact, what's your website, Shortcut?
It's shoikat.us, SAIKAT.us. And I gotta say, we're building the largest grassroots campaign that San Francisco's ever seen. We're gonna talk to hundreds of thousands of voters. We're already on our way to doing that. And so if you live in San Francisco or the Bay Area, please sign up to volunteer. Even if you don't live in the Bay Area, you can sign up to Phone Bank. And if you don't have time, please send a few dollars our way. We can absolutely win this thing. I mean, it's not a shoo-in. As Cenk said, I'm going up against a state senator. He is going to be the establishment pick. It's still a steep race. But we know that if we talk to every voter and we get this message out there, this campaign wins. So I'd love your help. Thank you.
Imagine if a progressive populist has Pelosi's seat. All right, Shortcut, thanks for joining us, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Cenk.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.